Respect is often misunderstood as something that is earned through external actions, through confidence, through communication, through strong boundaries, or through well-chosen words. But all of those behaviors rise from a deeper source. They are the visible branches of something much more essential, your inner state. The quality of your energy is what shapes the quality of the respect you receive. When you stand from a place of balance, people feel it before you speak. When you move from a place of centered awareness, others respond without understanding why. This is the quiet power of grounded energy, and it is the beginning of all genuine respect. To be grounded means that your emotions, thoughts, and reactions no longer control you. They pass through you like waves, but they do not determine your direction. Many people try to earn respect by being louder, tougher, more impressive, or more controlling. But respect built on performance is fragile. It depends on constant effort. It depends on pleasing. It depends on never showing weakness. Grounded respect is different. It does not require you to pretend. It comes from being settled within yourself, from knowing who you are without needing anyone to confirm it. Imagine a tree with deep roots. Wind can come, rain can come, heat can come. Nothing moves it from its center. A person with grounded energy carries that same stability. They are not emotionally reactive, nor are they easily manipulated by praise or criticism. When someone tries to provoke them, they do not rise to the bait. When someone tries to impress them, they do not lose themselves in admiration. Their attention remains calm. Their breath remains steady. Their thoughts remain clear. And because they do not collapse under pressure, people feel safe around them. Safety creates trust. Trust creates respect. For many, becoming grounded requires unlearning old habits of survival. Perhaps you have been taught that respect must be earned by pleasing others, by being perfect, or by sacrificing your own needs. Perhaps you were conditioned to believe that strength means hardness and vulnerability means weakness. But grounded energy is not hardness, it is calm. It is not emotional suppression, it is emotional mastery. It is not stubbornness, it is clarity. You learn to feel without being overwhelmed, to care without losing yourself, to love without abandoning your principles. This is what makes grounded people so compelling. Their inner world is steady enough to guide their outer world. When your energy is grounded, you do not fear silence. You do not rush to fill every gap with words. You can observe without anxiously needing to respond. Presence becomes your strength. Because you are not in a hurry to prove yourself, others naturally slow down around you, recalibrating their behavior to match your tempo. This is why grounded energy commands respect without force. It shifts the atmosphere of any room you walk into. People treat you differently not because you make them, but because they sense something steady in you that they do not want to disturb. Communication also changes when you are grounded. You speak from a place of clarity rather than emotion. You say what you mean without attacking, and you express how you feel without collapsing. You do not allow anger to speak for you, nor do you let fear shrink your voice. This kind of communication is powerful not because it is loud, but because it is intentional. People naturally listen when someone speaks from a steady center. They may not always agree, but they notice. Respect begins there. In relationships, grounded energy becomes even more important. It prevents you from losing yourself in someone else's moods, expectations, or opinions. Instead of being reactive to every shift in behavior, you remain connected to your own internal guidance. This creates emotional independence, one of the most attractive and respected qualities a person can have. When you do not depend on someone else's validation to feel secure, you become someone they cannot easily shake. Consistency becomes your foundation, and from that foundation, your boundaries, desires, and standards rise naturally, without needing to be forced. People often confuse being grounded with being indifferent, but they are not the same. Indifference disconnects you from others. Groundedness connects you to yourself. It allows you to be present without becoming overwhelmed. It allows you to care without becoming dependent. It allows you to love without becoming lost. This balance is what creates respect that endures, because people admire those who move from clarity rather than chaos. Grounded energy is something you cultivate through practice, not through theory. It grows each time you breathe before reacting, each time you observe without judging, each time you choose stillness over impulsiveness. You become grounded each time you pause long enough to hear your own inner voice before responding to the outer world. And over time, This inner voice becomes your anchor. It guides you, protects you, strengthens you. Respect begins the moment your energy settles into itself, when you no longer seek permission to be who you are, when your presence becomes a reflection of the work you have done within yourself. When people encounter this version of you, they recognize something rare: a person who is not driven by chaos, fear, or insecurity, but by a quiet strength that cannot be easily shaken. And from that recognition, respect grows naturally, without effort, without negotiation, without needing to be demanded. Boundaries are often misunderstood as barriers, walls, or rigid lines drawn to keep others out. But true boundaries are not obstacles, they are instructions. They teach others how to interact with you, how to treat you, and how to value your presence. And what makes them powerful is not the volume with which you announce them, but the consistency with which you uphold them. Boundaries do not need to be loud. They do not need to be dramatic. They speak through your actions, your behavior, your choices, and your silence. That is why boundaries are silent teachers. They educate without noise, without argument, and without emotional fireworks. When you try to force someone to respect your limits through confrontation, anger, or pleading, you weaken the very boundary you are trying to build. A boundary that must be defended with constant explanation is not a boundary, it is a negotiation. Real boundaries do not negotiate. They simply exist, and because they exist, they shape the behavior of those around you. The power lies not in telling someone where your line is, but in showing them what happens when that line is crossed. Your response or lack of response is the lesson. Silent boundaries begin with clarity within yourself. You must know what is acceptable and what is not. You must recognize what brings you peace and what disturbs it. Many people struggle with boundaries because they do not trust themselves enough to enforce them. They fear losing someone, disappointing someone, or appearing difficult. But every time you sacrifice your inner truth to maintain an outer relationship, you weaken your sense of self. Boundaries do not destroy connection, they preserve your dignity within it, and dignity is the foundation of respect. A silent boundary speaks in the moments when you refuse to explain yourself repeatedly. It speaks when you choose distance instead of engaging in arguments that go nowhere. It speaks when you remove yourself from disrespect rather than trying to correct it. Silence becomes a form of communication not rooted in withdrawal, but in self-respect. People quickly learn what behavior you accept when they see what behavior you quietly walk away from. And yet, boundaries are not punishments. They are not meant to control others, but to protect your energy. When you set a boundary, you are not telling someone what to do, you are telling them what you will do. This shift in perspective is powerful. A boundary is not, you cannot speak to me like this. A boundary is, if you speak to me like this, I will not stay in the conversation. A boundary is not, you must prioritize me. A boundary is, if I am not valued here, I will adjust the closeness of this relationship. Boundaries do not demand change in others. They create change in you, which then changes everything around you. Silent boundaries are most effective because they remove emotional charge. When you are calm, clear, and consistent, others understand that your limits are not threats or reactions, they are truths. Emotional boundaries delivered in anger are often ignored because they sound like outbursts. Boundaries delivered through action are respected because they feel stable, predictable, and genuine. And there is something deeply transformative about the stillness that comes with upholding your boundary. It requires discipline to not over-explain yourself. It requires strength to remain calm when someone pushes against your limits. It requires self-trust to walk away when something does not align with your values. But every time you choose yourself in this way, you become stronger. You send a message to your own mind, I can rely on myself. I protect myself. I honor myself. This inner message is the foundation of unshakable confidence. People feel the difference when they interact with someone who has silent boundaries. There is a sense of certainty in the way you carry yourself. You do not need validation to confirm your decisions. You do not need approval to justify your limits. You do not need to explain your worth. It is communicated through the way you live. The more grounded you are in your boundaries, the less you feel compelled to convince others of anything. You simply act in alignment with your principles, and your behavior speaks for you. Silent boundaries also simplify relationships. Those who genuinely respect you will adjust their behavior, not because you force them, but because they value your presence. Those who do not respect you will eventually distance themselves, not because you push them away, but because they cannot benefit from overstepping your limits anymore. In this way, boundaries reveal truth. They separate what is aligned from what is not, who values your peace from who only values your availability. Many people fear that boundaries will make them appear cold or distant. But true boundaries create warmth, not coldness. They create clarity instead of confusion. They create respect instead of resentment. When you honor your limits, you are more present, more authentic, and more connected because you are not carrying the silent weight of frustration or self-betrayal. You interact from a place of honesty instead of obligation. Silent boundaries teach others through the language of consistency. They show that you are not easily moved by pressure or emotional manipulation. They show that your self-worth is not dependent on someone else's approval. They show that your peace is something you are willing to protect even if it requires distance. And over time, people come to understand that your presence is not something they can take lightly because it is governed by principles they cannot violate without consequence. Presence is one of the most powerful forces a person can offer. It communicates long before words are spoken, long before actions are interpreted, long before someone decides whether to take you seriously or not. Presence is the energy you bring into a room, the awareness you hold within yourself, and the clarity with which you choose to engage with the world. But presence without intention is scattered, unfocused, and easily dismissed. To be respected, to be understood, to be felt, you must enter every space with a sense of purpose. Your presence must carry intention. Intention does not mean forcing outcomes or controlling the behavior of others. It means knowing why you are showing up, knowing what you stand for, and knowing what energy you want to embody. When you walk into a conversation without intention, you become reactive. You absorb whatever energy surrounds you. You become shaped by the moods, expectations, and opinions of others. But when you walk in with intention, you influence the space instead of being influenced by it. Your presence becomes a silent anchor that people naturally respond to. Think of a person who enters a room with scattered thoughts, unclear boundaries, and insecure energy. Even before they speak, others sense hesitation. Their presence communicates uncertainty. Now, compare that with someone who enters with calm awareness, grounded breath, and deliberate movements. They do not need attention. Attention comes to them. They do not need to assert authority. Authority rises naturally from their stillness. Intention shapes presence, and presence shapes respect. To carry intention means to be conscious of your inner state. Before you speak, you check your energy. Before you respond, you check your breath. Before you act, you check your purpose. This does not create stiffness, it creates alignment. When your inner world is organized, your outer communication becomes clearer and others instinctively follow your lead. Presence becomes a form of silent instruction. People treat you according to the energy you bring. Intention also determines how you handle conflict. Without intention, conflict becomes reaction, a cycle of emotional responses, defensiveness, and impulsive decisions. With intention, conflict becomes an opportunity for clarity. You speak from a calm place rather than from fear. You listen without preparing your rebuttal. You respond rather than react. This approach changes the dynamic completely. People cannot easily provoke or manipulate someone who is anchored in intention. They sense a stability that commands respect and alters their behavior. To carry intention means to decide every day what version of yourself you will offer to the world. Do you want to move through life anxiously seeking validation? Or do you want to move with dignity? Do you want to engage with fear or with clarity? Do you want your presence to reflect chaos or calmness? These choices define the impression you leave behind. People may forget what you say, but they remember how your presence made them feel. And when your presence communicates strength, serenity, and purpose, you are not easily forgotten. Intention also influences relationships. When your presence carries intention, you no longer participate in dynamics that drain you. You no longer give your time without awareness. You no longer allow your energy to scatter in environments that do not nourish you. Instead, you show up fully where it matters, and you withdraw where it does not. This selective participation reinforces your value. It signals that your time, attention, and presence are meaningful. People respect what is not freely given without discernment. When you bring intention into your interactions, your communication changes. You speak with clarity, not confusion. You choose your words instead of spilling them. You express without attacking, and you assert without aggression. Your tone becomes steady, your body language becomes grounded, and your eye contact becomes more meaningful. Intention sharpens the way you connect with others because you are not speaking just to fill space. You are speaking from awareness. Intention also gives your presence depth. Many people move through life unconsciously, repeating patterns, reacting to triggers, following emotions without understanding them. But when you move with intention, you rise above habitual behavior. You become more deliberate with your thoughts, more careful with your actions, and more aware of your choices. This creates a sense of inner authority. People sense that you do not act impulsively or thoughtlessly, and that creates trust. Trust naturally evolves into respect. Your presence becomes a reflection of your internal discipline. When you take care of your mental state, when you regulate your emotions, when you remain mindful of your breath, others notice, even if they cannot explain what they are noticing. There is something unmistakable about a person who has mastered their inner world. They do not rush, they do not panic, they do not crumble. Their presence brings calm to chaos and clarity to confusion. They become the stable point in any environment. Intention also protects you. It keeps you from pouring energy into situations that do not align with you. It prevents you from staying silent when you need to speak. It guides you away from people who drain you and toward people who respect your essence. It ensures that you do not betray yourself in exchange for temporary approval. When your presence carries intention, you stop living reactively and start living from purpose. You become someone who is not easily swayed by emotions or external noise. And while intention is silent, it is not invisible. It shows in the way you stand, in the way you breathe, in the way you listen, and in the way you choose your next step. It radiates through your calmness, through your discipline, and through your awareness. It shapes the energy you bring into every interaction and determines whether others experience you as someone to ignore or someone to respect. Detachment is often misunderstood. Many hear the word and imagine coldness, emotional distance, or the refusal to care. But true detachment is none of these. True detachment is the discipline of remaining connected without becoming consumed, caring without collapsing, loving without losing yourself. It is the quiet strength of holding your own center, even when the world around you pushes, or tries to draw you into its storms. Detachment builds inner authority because it frees you from the need to control others and protects you from being controlled by them. Inner authority begins the moment you stop making your peace dependent on someone else's behavior. When your emotions rise and fall based on how another person treats you, you lose access to your inner power. You become reactive instead of intentional. You give away your equilibrium. But detachment teaches you to observe without absorbing, to feel without drowning, to see clearly without being blinded by desire or fear. This clarity allows you to make decisions from wisdom rather than reaction. Detachment is not the absence of feeling. It is the presence of stability. It is the ability to let someone speak without rushing to defend yourself. It is the strength to walk away from what is not aligned without needing to punish or convince anyone. It is the quiet confidence of knowing that your worth does not rise or fall based on whether someone stays, leaves, approves, or misunderstands you. When your self-worth becomes self-generated, your inner authority becomes unshakable. Many people cling to situations because they fear loss. They grip tightly, hoping that controlling the outcome will save them from pain. But attachment rooted in fear creates suffering. It breeds anxiety, jealousy, overthinking, and emotional turbulence. Detachment, on the other hand, allows you to breathe. It allows you to trust that what is meant for you will remain, and what is not will naturally fall away. This trust strengthens your sense of self because you are no longer fighting reality. You are moving with it. Inner authority grows each time you choose alignment over attachment. When you detach from the need to be liked, your actions become more authentic. When you detach from the need to prove yourself, your presence becomes more powerful. When you detach from the fear of being alone, your standards rise effortlessly because you are no longer negotiating your dignity. Detachment creates space, space for clarity, space for truth, space for self-respect to take root. A person who has mastered detachment carries a certain presence. They listen deeply but do not absorb negativity. They care deeply but do not cling. Their emotions move through them without dictating their next step. This kind of presence commands respect because it reflects mastery. It shows that you are not easily swayed, not easily shaken, not easily manipulated. Your inner world is governed by your own principles, not by the unpredictability of others. Detachment strengthens your boundaries. When you are attached to an outcome, your boundaries become weak because you fear that enforcing them will cause loss. You tolerate disrespect, inconsistency, and emotional chaos because you believe that holding your line will push someone away. But when you detach, you no longer fear the consequences of protecting your peace. You realize that anyone who leaves because you upheld your standards was never aligned with you in the first place. This understanding gives you the courage to stand firm. With detachment, relationships become healthier because they are built on choice, not dependence. You no longer seek validation from others because you have learned to validate yourself. You no longer chase approval because you trust your own judgment. You no longer cling to uncertainty because you recognize your ability to navigate life regardless of who stays or goes. This inner authority becomes a source of deep peace. Detachment also opens the door to self-awareness. When you are overly attached, your perspective becomes cloudy. You project fears, overreact to minor shifts, and lose sight of what is true. You begin to interpret every action as a threat or reassurance. But detachment brings clarity. It allows you to see situations as they are, not as your fears paint them. It creates mental space for reflection rather than reaction. It helps you ask, does this align with my values, with my peace, with my long-term well-being? Instead of acting from desperation, you act from wisdom. The more you practice detachment, the more you realize that control was never the answer. Control exhausts you. Control traps you. Control disconnects you from your intuition. Detachment frees you from the illusion that everything depends on your effort. It allows you to move through life with calmness, trusting that you can handle whatever arrives and release whatever needs to leave. This self-trust is the foundation of inner authority. Detachment does not close your heart, it protects it. It ensures that your love is offered freely, not driven by fear. It ensures that your presence is a choice, not a plea. It ensures that your relationships are based on respect, not dependence. A detached heart can love deeply because it is grounded in strength, not in security. It can give fully without losing itself, and it can receive without grasping. Inner authority grows with every moment you choose peace over chaos, clarity over emotional entanglement, and self-respect over fear-driven attachment. Detachment becomes the bridge between who you were, reactive, anxious, easily moved, and who you are becoming, calm, centered, confident, and untouchable in your inner world. Many people believe that respect is earned through words, declarations, or repeated reminders of what they expect from others. They believe that by stating their rules, listing their expectations, or verbally asserting their worth, they will be acknowledged, admired, or valued. But respect is never truly cultivated in speech alone. Respect grows in the soil of action, in the consistency of lived principles, and in the quiet power of demonstrated standards. When you live your standards rather than merely speaking them, you communicate your worth in a way that cannot be ignored, debated, or dismissed. Living your standards begins with self-awareness. You must first know what you value, what you will accept, and what you will not. Many people fail to receive respect because they are unclear about these boundaries, leaving others to define how they are treated. A person who lives their standards does not wait for circumstances or others to teach them what is acceptable. They internalize their values so completely that every action, every choice, every response naturally reflects them. This alignment between inner truth and outward behavior is magnetic, and it commands attention and respect without the need for words. The danger of speaking standards without living them is that it creates inconsistency. People quickly sense when your words are not backed by actions. Promises become empty, warnings become meaningless, and declarations become noise. When you tell someone, "I expect honesty," but consistently tolerate lies or manipulation, your standard loses its power. Respect in turn diminishes. Conversely, when your life consistently mirrors your values, there is no need for long explanations, no need to demand compliance, no need to argue for consideration. People simply observe and adjust because they cannot ignore the integrity of your presence. Living standards also shapes the energy you carry. Words can be persuasive, but energy is felt. People respond to what they sense more than what they hear. When you enforce your standards through behavior, you create an invisible authority. Others intuitively recognize the firmness of your principles. They sense the clarity of your choices and the steadiness of your presence. This is why living standards produces respect in a way that words alone never can. It bypasses argument, bypasses manipulation, and bypasses the need to prove yourself. Consistency is the heartbeat of living standards. A single exception may seem minor, but repeated exceptions erode authority. Respect requires reliability. When people see that your actions always align with your principles, they learn not to test boundaries because they have witnessed the consequences of crossing them. It is not your threats, your explanations, or your negotiations that teach this. It is your consistency. Every time you choose alignment over compromise, you reinforce your authority. Every time you respond in accordance with your values, your presence communicates something unspoken but undeniable. You are not easily swayed, and you will not lower your standards. Lived standards also communicate self-respect. People respect those who respect themselves first. If you tolerate behavior that undermines you, you silently signal that your value is negotiable. If you compromise your principles for temporary approval, you show that your boundaries are flexible. Living standards means never abandoning your sense of worth for the sake of acceptance. It means honoring your integrity even when it is inconvenient, uncomfortable, or misunderstood. When your behavior communicates self-respect, others have no choice but to respond accordingly. Respect cannot exist where self-respect is absent. Living standards does not mean rigidity or coldness. It is not about being unyielding or inflexible. True standards are rooted in clarity, not ego. They are maintained with calmness, not with aggression. You do not need to enforce them loudly or constantly remind others of your rules. Your actions speak for you. If someone violates your boundaries, you act. If someone disregards your principles, you adjust. If someone honors your space, your presence, or your values, you respond with clarity and calm engagement. This approach fosters respect because it is aligned, intentional, and grounded, not reactive or desperate. Another dimension of living standards is that it teaches without words. People often underestimate the subtle power of quiet consistency. You do not have to lecture, debate, or justify. By living your values, you create a model that others cannot ignore. They observe, they adapt, they measure their behavior against the standards you demonstrate. This is far more effective than any argument or assertion because it bypasses resistance. Respect grows not from pressure, but from observation of integrity in action. Furthermore, living standards is a reflection of self-discipline. It requires awareness, patience, and courage. There are moments when it is easier to compromise, to appease, or to conform. But each time you choose to uphold your principles, you reinforce the authority of your character. Respect, once earned through action, is maintained through continued adherence to these standards. It becomes a natural part of your presence rather than a borrowed or conditional response. Living standards also transforms relationships. When you operate from clear principles, you attract those who value integrity and alignment, and you naturally repel those who do not. This creates an environment where mutual respect is the baseline rather than the exception. People learn quickly that your presence carries weight, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. This embodiment creates clarity in interactions, reduces unnecessary conflict, and fosters connection rooted in authenticity rather than manipulation. In every aspect of life, whether personal, professional, or social, respect is less about what you say and more about what you consistently demonstrate. Words may open doors, but actions cement trust. Words may set expectations, but actions enforce reality. Living your standards creates a rhythm that others cannot ignore, a frequency that commands alignment, and a quiet authority that requires no explanation. Strength is often misunderstood as something loud, visible, or forceful. Society teaches that to be strong is to be aggressive, to dominate, or to assert oneself constantly. But true strength is quiet. It does not need attention. It does not demand validation. It does not announce itself with theatrics. Quiet strength is the type that moves through the world with calm purpose, unwavering presence, and steady conviction. It is the power that comes from inner discipline, self-awareness, and emotional mastery. And though it may appear subtle, quiet strength changes everything. Quiet strength begins with self-mastery. It is the ability to regulate your own emotions, thoughts and reactions in the midst of life's turbulence. Many people confuse strength with the ability to control others, but real strength is control over oneself. When you can remain calm under pressure, patient in moments of frustration, and measured in response rather than reaction, you radiate an energy that draws respect naturally. People sense stability, and stability is magnetic. Quiet strength is the energy that cannot be shaken because it originates in a place deeper than circumstance or opinion. Another facet of quiet strength is presence. Those who possess it do not rush to prove themselves, nor do they seek recognition. They do not need to assert dominance or shout to be heard. Instead, their presence alone communicates authority, reliability, and integrity. When you enter a space with calm awareness and intentional energy, people notice. They adjust their own behavior unconsciously because energy has a language that words cannot replicate. Strength that is loud may intimidate momentarily, but it rarely inspires lasting respect. Quiet strength, by contrast, changes the dynamics of every interaction it enters. Quiet strength is also grounded in resilience. It is the ability to face difficulty, rejection, or opposition without losing composure. When challenges arise, a quietly strong person does not collapse or panic. They do not lash out in anger or frustration. Instead, they hold their center, assess the situation with clarity, and act from a place of wisdom rather than fear. This type of strength is transformative because it stabilizes not only the individual, but also the environment around them. People are drawn to it because it offers safety, clarity, and trust. A crucial element of quiet strength is patience. The world often demands immediate reaction, instant validation, or visible displays of power. But quiet strength knows that true impact is cultivated over time. It understands that moments of restraint, observation, and reflection create results far more profound than impulsive action. By remaining steady, patient, and aligned, a person demonstrates that their power does not depend on circumstance. Others may try to provoke, rush, or undermine, but quiet strength is unmoved. This composure creates influence because it signals mastery that cannot be easily challenged. Boundaries are another expression of quiet strength. Setting and maintaining them does not require loud confrontation or constant reminders. Boundaries are enforced silently through consistent action. When a person lives in accordance with their principles, honors their own needs, and refuses to compromise their integrity, they teach others what is acceptable without ever raising their voice. People learn respect through observation. They notice the consequences of crossing these boundaries. They witness the calm authority that remains steadfast in the face of pressure. This is how quiet strength quietly, yet profoundly, changes the behavior of those around it. Quiet strength also manifests in the ability to listen and observe. It does not rush to respond or dominate conversations. Instead, it holds space, absorbs the energy of a situation, and acts from clarity rather than impulse. This attentiveness allows a person to see patterns, understand dynamics, and make decisions that others cannot anticipate. It is a form of power that is often underestimated because it does not demand attention, but its effect is undeniable. A quietly strong person can influence outcomes, inspire trust, and command respect without raising their voice or making a show of force. Another dimension of quiet strength is emotional independence. People who are quietly strong do not rely on external validation to feel secure. They are not easily swayed by criticism, praise, or the approval of others. Their worth is generated internally. This independence communicates a subtle authority. They cannot be manipulated and they cannot be controlled. Others instinctively recognize this, and respect naturally follows. Emotional dependence, in contrast, often leads to desperation, neediness, and imbalance, which undermines influence and diminishes presence. Quiet strength also changes decision-making. It allows a person to act with discernment rather than haste. Impulsive strength may achieve immediate results but often creates conflict or instability. Quiet strength weighs options, considers consequences, and chooses action that aligns with long-term vision rather than short-term gain. This deliberate approach fosters trust because people can rely on the quiet strength of someone who acts with integrity rather than unpredictability. Additionally, quiet strength cultivates humility. Those who possess it do not need to broadcast their achievements or remind others of their capabilities. Their competence and reliability speak for themselves. Humility combined with quiet strength is magnetic because it draws people in rather than pushing them away. It changes the energy of any environment, creating respect without coercion, inspiration without demand, and influence without force. Quiet strength is transformative in personal relationships as well. It allows a person to love fully without losing themselves, to set limits without hostility, and to communicate truth without aggression. It creates an atmosphere in which others feel seen, heard, and safe, because strength is not imposed, it is embodied. This embodiment shifts the dynamic of every connection, establishing patterns of respect, trust, and integrity that ripple outward naturally.